Hey everybody, it's Sam with Sam's Side Quest, and today we're going to be talking about the Nintendo 3DS, why I love it so much, and why I think it is worth picking up in 2020. So recently Nintendo announced the discontinuation of the 3DS line, and while I was thinking back on the system and all the time I spent with it, I really realized how much I love the system and how it's actually one of my favorite consoles of all time. Which is crazy to think about because even during its prime, it had significantly worse technology than the competition, and it had a really rough launch and start for the beginning of its life cycle. But with that being said, let's take a look back on this amazing system, why I hold it so near and dear to my heart, and why I think even in 2020 it's a great investment and why you should consider picking one up. So first, a look back at where the 3DS started. The 3DS was released in 2011 and had an absolutely booty cheeks launch. And I know a lot of systems have pretty rough launches with not a lot of launch titles, but the 3DS had a significantly awful launch release. It was priced at $250 US and was launched alongside of titles such as Steel Diver, Pilot Wings, and a re-release of Street Fighters, so there really was not any good games that came out for the console at all. And just months after the release, Nintendo dropped the price to $170, a whopping $80 reduction, which is unheard of in the gaming industry. But despite having such a terrible release, boom! Yes! Within a year later, the 3DS had amazing titles on the system, which really prevented it from being a complete failure like some other recent Nintendo system.
Do not bully people.
But within the same year, Nintendo released a bunch of Nintendo 64 ports, such as Star Fox 64, Ocarina of Time, which both played fantastically on the 3DS. And they released Super Mario Land 3D, which to this day is one of my favorite Mario games of all time. So what was the big differentiating factor between the Nintendo DS and the 3DS? And let's just address the elephant in the room, the 3D effect. 2011 was amidst this hype of 3D media within the US, such as 3D movies where people would wear glasses in movie theaters. And so Nintendo thought it'd be a great idea to instill that into their handheld systems. And while a lot of people think the 3D aspect of the 3DS is a gimmick, and to some extent it is, it's something that I truly loved about this system. How crazy is it to think about that Nintendo came out with a system that had a three-dimensional effect that required no glasses at all? And yeah, on the first few consoles, the 3DS and the 3DS XL, the 3D really was very gimmicky. You had to have it at just the perfect angle, and the 3D effect never was really that great. But on the newer models, like this one I have with me, the range to have the 3D come into effect was expanded a lot, and the 3D really became a great feature, especially in games like Ocarina of Time and Super Mario 3D Land. The 3D effect really adds and enhances the experience. I remember growing up playing Ocarina of Time. It was one of my favorite games of all time, and I knew I had to play it whenever it came onto the 3DS. And the 3D effect really gave this game a new life for me. Even though I couldn't play for the entire playthrough with the 3D effect on, for the 30 minutes to an hour that I would have it on, I just was engulfed in the game. I loved how the world and Hyrule looked with this new 3D effect. So yeah, it is gimmicky for some people, and to an extent for me it is as well, because I can only play with it on for 30 minutes to an hour, but in some games it really looked amazing. Even on the home screen, when you're looking at icons for specific games, for the eShop, Nintendo would put little pieces of 3D throughout your entire experience in the system. Looking at those icons rotate around, you can see those in 3D. There's so many things that were unique about the system, such as Street Pass, which might be something that we never see again in the Nintendo system. If you had your 3DS on you in a backpack, in a purse, and you walked by someone else who had the system, your 3DS would pick up that information and it would add points into random games, such as Animal Crossing and other Street Pass games. And the cool thing about the 3DS line was there really was a console for everybody. It's crazy to think about, but there was 6 different models for the 3DS. We had the original 3DS, the original 3DS XL, then they came out with the new 3DS, which is just another fantastic name scheme from Nintendo. So the new 3DS and the new 3DS XL. And then finally, the door hinge, or others call it the 2DS, and then the 2DS XL. And the crazy thing about all these systems was they all had pretty great build quality. I really think that Nintendo perfected the handheld feel and structure with the new 3DS XL, but each console had a unique and great feel to it. Even though the 2DS looks hilarious and ridiculous at the same time, it had a great feel in the hand and it was fun to play games on. And at the end of the day, that's what Nintendo wanted, more and more people to get their hands on the system and play the great games that were on it. And so that brings me to my next point, great games. And this is really where the 3DS shines. And when I'm thinking back on all the consoles I've played, the 3DS to me has one of the best catalogs of all time. Any type of genre you can think of, 3DS has you covered. Action, adventure, JRPGs, mystery, visual novels, everything except shooters, the 3DS really is going to have you covered. And it's not just going to be good games, it's fantastic games. When I think about some of my favorite games that I've played in the last decade, the 3DS is responsible for that. Games such as Fire Emblem Awakening. I had never played a Fire Emblem game in my entire life, and I was seeing a lot of great reviews for this game. And after picking it up, I completely fell in love with this series. It's one of the best real-time strategy games I've ever played, and I fell in love with the characters. And every Fire Emblem game on the 3DS is a great game and it's worth picking up. Not only that, but the JRPGs on the system are fantastic. Shin Megami Tensei 4, Dragon Quest VIII, those are some of the best JRPGs of all time, and they're all within a handheld system. Not only that, there's a total revitalization for the Pokemon series on the 3DS. This was at a time in my life when I thought I was never going to play Pokemon again, that I thought I had outgrown the series, and then BAM! Nintendo has this new gaming engine and drops Pokemon Y and X, and I completely fell in love with the series again. I loved the starter Pokemons, I loved the world in X and Y, and even, it's another gimmick, but I loved the Mega Evolutions as well. And they used the same engine to bring a new life to my favorite Pokemon game of all time, Pokemon Sapphire, on a Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So that alone makes enough great Pokemon games for the system, but that's not it. They also later came out with Pokemon Sun and Moon, and then eventually Ultra Sun and Moon, but these were fantastic games in the Pokemon series as well. They had completely new systems, they completely got rid of gyms and had island challenges that were a total blast. And not only that, but it had one of my favorite Mario games of all time as well. Another franchise that I thought as I was growing up, I might not enjoy that line of games anymore, but bang, with the 3D effect in Super Mario Land 3D, it was another Mario game that I fell in love with and I had an absolute blast with. Nintendo really has this ability to take a person with whatever stage in life they are and bring them back to the true meaning of being a kid and having fun, and doing that while gaming. On the outside, Mario, Pokemon all look like these silly children games, but when you get your hands on them and you're engulfed in the experience, you do feel like a kid again. And that's really the true meaning behind gaming, is having fun, having a blast, jumping back to how much fun you had as a kid. And the crazy thing is there's so many sleeper hits on the 3DS that I can make a whole hour-long video just talking about them. Nintendo revitalized the Metroid series with Samus Returns, like a 2D side-scrolling Samus game that literally no one expected, but they did it and it was fantastic. So not only are there great games on the 3DS, but guess what? There's amazing games on the DS as well, and you can play those all on your 3DS. The old Pokemon games, the old Legend of Zelda games like Minish Cap, Spirit Tracks, and so much more. The 3DS is great because you can play so many other generations of Nintendo's games all on one great feeling compact handheld system. So you can play DS games. On the eShop, they also had virtual consoles, so you could pick up Super Nintendo games, and Game Boy games, and they all played and looked great on the system. But a big question that I think most of you are wondering is, yeah, those games were great for their time, but how do they hold up today in 2020? And that really is a great question, because at the time, Super Smash Bros. 3D, when that came out, played and felt fantastic on a handheld system. It really felt like there was very little sacrifices to put the first Smash game on a handheld device, and it played so well. But today, you can pick up your Switch Lite and play Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and it is unarguably a better experience. And there's a lot of games like that on the Switch that are better experiences. Today you can play Mario Kart 8 on your Switch, and that is a much better game than Mario Kart 7. But what I'll say to that is, while there are some games that you can experience the newer, better version of on a Switch or a different console, that's not true for a lot of the games on the 3DS. Games like Shin Megami Tensei 4, games like Fire Emblem Awakening, Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds, and Super Mario Land 3D, these are all fantastic games that are going to stand the test of time, and they play fantastic today, and they have great experiences. And that's the beauty of some of Nintendo's games. Think about Ocarina of Time. It's a game that came out nearly 25 years ago, but it holds up so well. The gaming mechanics are amazing, the story is simple but enticing, and the graphics look beautiful. And that's really what Nintendo had to work with for the 3DS. At the time, even during its prime, the technology was dated, and so graphics looked worse than the Vita, and they looked significantly worse than other systems like the 360, PS3, and even the Wii U. But they knew with those limitations, they had to make great looking games based off of their art style, and they also had to make games that played well. And because of that, they aged fantastically. So based off of the enjoyment factor, I cannot recommend picking up a 3DS enough if you never did. But now let's switch to the aspect of a collector. And typically what we see with consoles is that, you know, they stick to their MSRP when they first release, or the consoles and the games. They lower a little bit once they age for like a year or two. And then once they move on to the next generation console, that's when it's the best time to pick up those previous generation games because they're so cheap. But the crazy thing about the 3DS is some of these games are selling for astronomical prices. Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse is selling for over $120 on eBay. If for those of you who have been 3DS collectors in your past and might have games in your closet, it might be worth checking out to see what you have, because you could be sitting on a load of cash. If you do have some of those games, or if you're in the market for some new games or a handheld system, now is really the best time going forward to pick it up. Knowing Nintendo and their track record, these games are only going to increase more and more in price and get more and more expensive. But at the end of the day, it is worth the price because these are such fantastic games and experiences. And the hardware is so great too. Like the 3DS to me is just the perfect feeling handheld system. I love the analog stick. The buttons are clicky with great feedback. And this is really the last time we're going to see a 2-screen system, at least for the foreseeable future. And Nintendo really used it to enhance the gaming experience. So I'm sure you know what my opinion is going to be on if you should pick up the 3DS. From this entire video, I really haven't said a lot of negatives. Yeah, graphics don't look that good and they do look dated. I'm not going to disagree with that. So if you're looking at games like Mario Kart 7 and you have a Switch, or you're looking at games like Super Smash Bros. And you have a Switch, and you've seen how these games look in 1080p, a lot of the art is going to look dated to you. But what I'll say to that is the art and the graphics do not hold back the experiences. And some of the experiences on the 3DS are the best out there in gaming. And at the end of the day, you can't beat an amazing handheld gaming experience. Even though mobile gaming has drastically changed over the past decade and it's a lot better than it used to be, you're worried about all these microtransactions when you play a game, and touch controls never feel that great. But with a 3DS, you buy what you're buying is what you're getting. You play a game, you plug it in, no microtransactions, you're not worrying about text. You're just picking this up to game with some great games on a great console. So that's gonna do it for the video, guys. I know this is a random video. I felt like the 3DS deserved some justice after a decade of amazing gaming experiences and a sad retirement from Nintendo. 3DS, I hope you enjoy retirement. You're a fantastic system that brought me a ton of joy and happiness as a kid and as I grew up into an adult. I'm forever grateful for the experiences I had on such an amazing console. With that, I'm gonna wrap up the video. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, more gaming related videos, as well as manga content. I appreciate all the support and I hope everyone has a great day. Peace.